So I'm not gonna waste your time in this video. The first habit that changed my life to the better was boxing. I started doing boxing around a year ago, but I only started going to a proper boxing gym around 7 months ago. Before that, I was just going to the weightlifting gym, and there was like a heavy bag there, and I just have a go on it, right, punch it. And one of the key things that boxing has taught me is that things don't actually matter as much as you think they do, and oftentimes you shouldn't really give them any headspace of yours. So for example, I don't give a shit about small bad things happening anymore. I don't give a shit about, for example, someone leaving a mean comment on this video. Why would I give a shit about that, right? I've been punched in the face. I don't give a shit. It doesn't come close to that. Like, dude, I've gotten the living fuck kicked out of me in the boxing gym. I can promise you that's a much worse experience than some nobody commenting on my video. Why would I give a fuck about that? It basically just sets the standard much higher. It sets the bar much higher for what you care about overall. And it basically gives you this calm, this peace overall. You're not overthinking about some minor issue here and there. You can just let it be because you don't care. Because oftentimes, a lot of these problems, a lot of this anxiety shit is merely in our head. You can probably understand it. A lot of it is that we overthink, we fear other people's judgment on us, right? And martial arts, and specifically getting punched in the face on a regular basis, has taught me that they don't matter. If you had a near-death experience yesterday, how much would you care if your cat didn't want to be petted today? Like, it doesn't matter anymore. It's merely the juxtaposition, right? The contrast between the two scenarios. It's been very helpful for me. I can just think about some minor issue, like I don't care. Like, what would I care? I don't give a shit. And overall, it's just been a very positive experience. And for example, when I say that I've been punched in the face and I've gotten the living fuck kicked out of me, that's not in a dangerous or uncontrolled way. Of course not. It's not even dangerous at all. It's just something to compare everything to. For example, if my mom doesn't like that I wear a leather jacket to school or something, like, I'm not gonna be bothered by her trying to impose her will on me. I'm not gonna be bothered by her saying how I'm wrong or something. Not that she does that often, but sometimes, you know. I'm just not really gonna care. To be honest, I'm not really gonna give a shit, and I'm not gonna count that as an actual problem. I'm not gonna count that as an issue because I've been through worse, and that's a really good phrase I like. I've been through worse. And for example, if you are going through any kind of hardships in life, you can just tell yourself either that you have experienced worse before, or if you don't, then you can just tell yourself that the future version of yourself will be thankful that you experience what you're experiencing right now, because it will just let him live in peace, because he will not care about some minor issue because he has gone through worse before. So the second habit that's changed my life drastically is meditation. And meditation, briefly explained, is basically bicep curls for your willpower and for your focus and for your mindfulness. So basically your ability to redirect your thoughts to wherever you want them to go. It's actually very fundamental to everything in life. For example, if you probably experienced talking to a friend and that friend is scrolling mindlessly on his phone while you're talking to him, that guy has basically zero mindfulness, because if he can't bring himself to keep his focus onto you while you're talking, he has to get some stimulation elsewhere. That's a major fucking issue, right? I would not accept that. I would not accept my friends being disrespectful to me in that manner, right? And I wouldn't surround myself with people of that nature. And the meditation is basically that. It's a cycle, right? It's cyclical, so you get reps in, right? So firstly you think about a thought. For example, I can think about my breath, and then my mind will naturally wander. So that's the second step. My mind wanders to something else. Perhaps some girl in my school, or some business work, or sparring yesterday or something. And then once I realize that my mind has wandered, I just bring my focus back to the original thought. That's one rep. And as you get better, you will be able to much more quickly realize when your mind has wandered and be able to get it back immediately. And over time, your whole reality, your whole existence will just be enhanced overall, because you're much sharper. You're not fucking mindlessly being stimulated by some garbage on your phone. You're actually here in the present moment. You can focus. And you probably heard about the attention economy, right? That attention is the new oil, and stuff like that. And it's absolutely true. If you are just giving away your attention to whatever comes to you, and whatever is giving you a bit of stimulation, then how the fuck are you expecting to be successful, right? So meditation is absolutely another key. And if you want to implement it right now, you can just put a timer on your phone, and perhaps you can add it into your morning routine. You just grab your phone, swipe down the right hand side, right, and you click on the alarm button, and then you set an alarm for 10 minutes, and then you just simply breathe in and out with your eyes closed, and direct your thoughts as much as possible to your breath. You go like that for 10 minutes, and dude, like, you can just try that once, and you'll see how fucking enhanced your whole existence will be. It's honestly like a bit mind-boggling to me, like, people not doing this shit. And this is nothing that people can sell you or some shit. No one makes money off of it, and you don't even need a phone. You can do it without a phone, right? And the only thing you need is your perhaps your breath and your consciousness. That's literally the only thing you need. Meaning, you can basically do it whenever you want to, in basically any environment, provided that there's no external threats, right? For example, if you are on the street in a bad neighborhood, then you probably shouldn't start meditating, right? But you get the point. You can do it basically anywhere, anytime, right? Now the third habit that's helped me a tremendous amount is taking notes, specifically when I am studying a certain concept. For example, when I'm consuming long-form content like a book or a podcast or a YouTube video or whatever. It basically transformed my learning overall. And learning, as I define it, which I learned from Alex Hormozi, is that learning is simply that you behave differently in the same environment. If I go to the boxing gym and a guy throws a punch at me and I take it, right? I don't move my head. And then the next time he does it, if I don't move my head, I had not learned, right? But if the next time he does it, I move my head a little bit and he misses, then I have learned, right? And intelligence is simply your rate of learning. For example, if I grab a red card and give you it and then I slap you, but if I do it again and then you duck, right? Then you are smart, you have learned. A stupid person would be put into the same condition over and over again and be punished for his behavior and not do anything differently the next time. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but simply that same condition, different behavior, that's learning, all right? And I've struggled quite a lot with just consuming a bunch of content online and not really being able to take action. It's a quite wide known phenomenon, all right? Procrastination. And what taking notes did for me when I was consuming content and I was forced to actually be attentive and to be perspicacious of what was being said or what I read in the book, right? And I had to write it down. What happened is that those same thoughts, those same words were integrated into my mind on a much more deeper level. And perhaps you've heard about the quote, when one teaches to learn, and it's absolutely and utterly true, or at least it has been in my experience. And it's basically that when you're teaching a concept, which is exactly what I'm doing right now, you yourself learn the concept much better. You get a much better grasp of it. Because if you were to read a book in one sitting, would you be able to teach the entire book to someone else? Probably not, right? But if you were to teach a little bit of it to someone else, that same part would be more integrated into your psyche and into your mind. Like, I hope that makes sense, right? And it simply transformed my learning drastically, right? And it also put an end to my endless, just mindless consumption. Because if I were consuming a piece of content and I decided that I had to take notes, right? It forced me to be mindful, right? We talked earlier about meditation. It forced me to be in a flow state and not getting distracted by anything else. Because if I were half brain dead consuming this content, if I were mindless, if I were watching a YouTube video and scrolling on my phone at the same time, which is perhaps what you're doing right now or some shit, I would not be able to take notes. I wouldn't remember anything that was being said, right? For example, if you read a book and you read 3 sentences, but you can't even recall what you just read, you can't even say what you just read like fucking 5 seconds ago, that's a fucking problem, right? And what taking notes does is that it basically forces you to getting rid of that shit, because it gives you accountability overall, right? For example, if I study a hour-long podcast of Alex Hormozi or Andrew Huberman, and afterwards my notes document is empty, I'm gonna feel like a bitch, right? And I don't want that, right? So that's one thing you can do. Just take notes. You can just grab a pen and piece of paper, or you can go into the Google document, right? It's very simple. And another thing you can do is that you can go back to your notes whenever you're feeling lost in a certain area. For example, if I were taking notes on Andrew Huberman's testosterone guide and I was thinking about how could I boost my testosterone, I could just go into the Google document and reintegrate the thoughts that I've already written down into my mind, right? So you can just do that. You can go back to the old document, right? And that's one benefit with taking notes on your computer, right? In a document. Now the next habit that's dramatically increased the quality of my life is reading overall. And I mentioned reading earlier, but I want to make it as a separate habit, because it is such a powerful medium, right? You have in mediums, you have written word, you have video, you have audio, and you have a visual, right? You can see a picture, you can watch a video, you can read words, and you can hear sound like audio, right? And books are by far, in my opinion, the most powerful medium of those, right? It's even more powerful than podcasts, right? And the reason is that there is such a high entry to read a book. Like if someone were to read a book, they would not just half-ass it. Like that book would be a representation of them and their brand, and it would probably take them months, if not even years, to write that book. And most people, at least, they would put that amount of effort into something, would make sure that it doesn't suck, right? That is actually genuinely good. For example, this YouTube video, I'm of course trying to teach you something on this YouTube video, but if I were to write a book about these 5 habits, but how much better would that be? Like, right? Of course, a lot better, right? Because these 10-minute videos or something on YouTube, they don't really take that much time to make. They take perhaps like 15 minutes to script and 15 minutes to record, like 20 minutes to record or something. But the thing with a book, it is that it doesn't take minutes, doesn't take hours, that it doesn't take days, doesn't take weeks, doesn't even always take months, but years. For example, if I were to do something for a year, of course I would make it much better than a fucking 10-15 minute YouTube video, of course, right? And you're basically delving into the mind of one of the most intellectual people on the planet inside this particular topic. For example, one of the greatest books that I've read is called The 48 Laws of Power, and by Robert Greene. I'm literally digging into his mind and all of his ideas in a easy to consume format that takes me a couple of perhaps, but imagine the amount of thinking and processing and experiencing he must have gone through to come up with everything that is inside the book. Probably like decades, right? Tens of years. Well, I get it in tens of hours. And that's why books are some of the greatest things to consume, right? And a few books that I would recommend are the books by Alex Hormozi, Russell Brunson, and Robert Greene. Yeah, those are fucking amazing, to be honest. The first 2 authors write more about money overall, right? And Robert Greene is more about the persuasion and psychology side. But they're of course intertwined, which basically just means that if you read one of them, you will be able to apply it to the other and ultimately get a compounding effect. So I would recommend you start reading if you haven't done it, right? And generally, you don't really want to be doing what the 99% are, because you don't really want to be like the 99%, right? But in this particular scenario, when you are trying to find the best books in our like self-improvement space, the ones that are recommended by basically everyone are actually great. And the reason for that, in my opinion, or at least in my hypothesis, is that the people who read self-improvement books are already in the top 1%, right? So what those guys are recommending are usually fucking bangers of books, right? And the books by Alex Hormozi, Russell Brunson, and Robert Greene, that are all very well known, but they're still fucking bangers, right? Absolute bangers. So I would recommend you get into those. Now the 5th habit is a quite interesting one, and it is to shed friends. And of course, we still want to have social connection overall. We want to have a clan of brothers that we can grow alongside of. Time, attention, and energy are basically your only resources as a broke guy, right? You don't really have a lot of money, and where you allocate those resources are basically the #1 indicator of what your life is going to be in the future. And if you allocate those resources on idiots, then that's not going to yield anything. That's not going to lead to anything positive, right? And it seems simple, yet still people mess it up. And I think it stems a lot from fear, to be honest. I think they fear other people's judgment of them. I think they fear solitude. I think they fear being outcasts of some sort. And outcast has this negative connotation, right? But in my opinion, outcast is just an exceptional individual. Because an exceptional individual is just an exception, someone that is not normal. And since most people are not going to be exceptional, because then the word would have no intrinsic meaning, because the word exception means not normal, you're not going to be able to have as many friends as the normal people. That's just very self-explanatory, right? And it's nothing to feel bad about. In my opinion, there's no shame in solitude. If you want to prioritize your relationship with what you and I probably know are half bumbling idiot friends over your long-term goals, over your mission, over your vision, over your purpose overall, then that's your decision. But personally, I would not ever consider doing that, right? That doesn't mean that I won't have any friends, right? Of course I still will, but I will always prioritize my goals over mediocre social connection. Because one of the things that happen when you are not basically socially obligated to spend time with the people that are not even making you any better is that you free up so fucking much of your time and your attention, right? It's honestly like, dude, it's absolutely eye-opening when you try it at first, right? Like because all of these micro moments when you're applying to someone or talking to someone in school, all of these micro moments will compound over time, and over time the saved time and attention will absolutely and utterly show, and it has done for me. So how do you actually go about shedding your friends, and how do you know if you should shed your friends or not? So I have my litmus test for this, and the litmus test is basically a final test that basically gives you a conclusion on what you should do. The litmus test for this, for me, is to ask myself, Does this person genuinely root for me, genuinely want me to win, or does he explicitly or implicitly resent me when I win? And if those two questions are not answered a resounding yes, then I will not associate myself with them. I will not be friends with them, right? And an example of someone who is half that, for example, they root for you, but they don't really make you better, or perhaps your uncle or someone, perhaps one of your family members, they genuinely root for you. They want the best for you. They want to make you better, but they're not actually able to do so, right? They would be absolutely crushed if your life was decimated, but they're not really going to be adding any significant value, at least in terms of knowledge and ideas and stuff like that. You generally want to be at least showing gratitude to them for their pure intentions about you, but I don't think that you should necessarily be spending too much time with them, because ultimately you want to be spending time with people who actually make you better. You don't only want to be making them better by providing value, you also want to get stuff in return, right? Because otherwise it's just it's not a symbiotic relationship, right? And that's ultimately what you want to be aiming for, right? Now the opposite of that would be a rival of some sort. That's someone that could make you better, or perhaps even does make you better, but they don't root for you at all. They want the worst for you. So for example, if that will be perhaps a competitor in your market. For example, if you're in business and you and another company is going for the same market, the other guy could still provide you value. He could still provide you with motivation, and you could study his ideas and what he's doing, and you can derive positive stuff from that, right? You can absolutely and utterly benefit from your competitors, but they will not root for you. They don't want you to win, right? Because then they lose. So you generally want to be careful with both of those people. You don't really want to be spending too much time with any of them. Of course, you still want to show gratitude for the people who root for you, because that's, in my opinion, actually perhaps even rarer than the other one. You should want to be showing gratitude to them, but I wouldn't say you should spend too much time with them, right? Because they're not giving you anything. So how do you go about actually shedding your friends if you have decided that you need to do so? So there are basically two methods to doing this, at least for me, right? So the first one is over time. It's pretty self-explanatory. You simply stop contacting them as much. You keep your conversations short, and over time, I think that most people they will intrinsically just get it, like that you don't really want to be friends with them anymore, and it will be quite apparent over time, at least. And probably they will find a new group of friends, because if we're being honest, that friend that you are thinking of shedding is probably more of a mediocre person overall, and because they will find friends much more easily than you will, because you are trying to be exceptional and he's trying to be mediocre, right? And most people are mediocre. That's just how it is, and that's a very safe and quite comfortable way to go about it, right? The other way is to do it up front, and that's basically what I did with a few of my friends. They were simply not providing value to the group. We had a group of like 7 guys, and it didn't seem that they were trying as much as me and 2 other guys, and we tried over a long time, but at some point I just deleted them from our group chat, and one of the guys messaged me, and I told him why he was kicked out, because he was underperforming, and if he improves himself, he can absolutely come back, right? And you could absolutely do that. It requires a bit more balls, I would say. It's not as comfortable, but you save a lot of time, because if you're trying to progressively deload your friendship, like the opposite of progressive overload, you will still lose quite a bit of time and attention on the way of shedding your friend, when you instead could have just said to him, hey, this is what I want to do with my life, and I would really like you to follow along with me, but I don't know if you want to do that as well. But if you do, just let me know, right? But if you don't, then I will wish you the best of luck, or something like that. That's just generally how you can do it. You can do it over time or upfront. And there are pros and cons to both of them, as we discussed earlier. It's more comfortable to do it over time, but you basically gain your resources. You gain more time and attention and energy by doing it upfront. So that's basically it. Those are the 5 habits that generally improve my life the most, right?